Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good day to everyone. My name is Mohd Rushdan Mohd Jailani. I am one of the presenters in this Langkawi International Multidisciplinary Conference 2021. So in this conference, I would like to discuss and explain the discussions on the philosophical examinations on integrations of knowledge and ways forward. For the introduction, the topic of integration of knowledge concerned in this paper will be discussed purely under the discipline of Islamic epistemology. There is Islamic philosophy of knowledge. Epistemology is analyzed as the device and method to knowledge, and a person who is not equipped with epistemology will encounter difficulties in understanding knowledge and thus unable to expand his or her knowledge in intellectual manner. For the background of this paper, I believe most of readers and audience have come across with this secularism ideology and its impact to knowledge and intellectual. As many people might agree that it poisoned ideology. I mean, it's the poisoning ideology of secularism had inflicted chaos to the proper metaphysical realm of God, with the subordinations of existence in ranks through their corpus of so-called modern knowledge. They have been rendered dominantly, yet arguably as mainstreams intellectualism. The nature of unified and hierarchical knowledge is mistreated and broken into fragmentation because the supreme first principle of Tawhid as the soul of Islamic thought is suspended in knowledge production of modern science. As an antidote to this issue, fast forward after the Islamization of knowledge was introduced, the idea of integrations of knowledge was also brought into the picture to resolve the same brand crisis. And for the problem statement for this presentation, due to some epistemological ambiguities traced in the approach of integration of knowledge in reviving the Islamic intellectual tradition in current epoch, especially in the term integration itself in knowledge, in recognizing its pioneering leading thinkers initiated and its tentative blueprints of educations in Muslims' education, integration of knowledge seems to be grappling to present its philosophical underpinnings as in tandem with Islamic worldview as a valid solution to the knowledge crisis concern. And for the objective of this paper, the presentation of ontological, epistemological, axiological, and methodological examinations of integration of knowledge idea and its limitation, and number two, the proposed integration of knowledge framework as one of the methodologies of Islamic source in knowledge production and preservation. Meanwhile, talking about the methodology, the data collection method involved in this writing was purely library search, with the selections of literature from the advocates of integration of knowledge and some reference from Islamic epistemology literature from classical and contemporary time. The facts gathered from those literature were analyzed through content analysis technique with the approach of philosophical argumentation. Now we come to the idea of integration of knowledge, which somehow it will highlight the meaning or the basic concept, what we mean by integration of knowledge. Integration of knowledge emphasizes the integrations between knowledge source from revelations and knowledge source from human thought, centering on the Islamic worldview as the basis of the integration of knowledge. with the aim of building knowledgeable, civilized, and leadership person on the basis of justice. Meanwhile, Langkawi in 2014 has introduced this idea in his grand project of epistemological integration. This initiative is purely conceptualized as the methodology of knowledge in Islam. He contends that it might be classified as a branch of philosophy, ontology, epistemology, or ethics, in which case it takes on an abstract theoretical dimension. This integration can also be classified as a type of cultural social activity when the purpose for which it is undertaken is to provide necessary resources and to transform them into political, economic, or social activity. Langkawi also mentioned that this idea coins that epistemological integration, takamul ma'rifah, can be used to describe people with an encyclopedic knowledge of discipline such as language, literature, Islamic jurisprudence, the Quranic science, the Hadith science, history, and possibly astronomy, medicine, or mathematics. Some existing conceptual ideas of integration of knowledge, among others, can be seen in this list. Integrations of science and religion, integration of nakli and akli knowledge, integration of knowledge and amal, integrated learning model, paduan ilmu pendidikan terkamir, interconnectedness of religious science with other sciences, unity of Allah, knowledge, beings, and life, analogies to the parable of knowledge tree, Shajaratul Ilm, or spiderweb. So we come to the philosophical examinations on integration of knowledge in the context of ontological. As Oxford Dictionary defines integration is a process of combining or accumulating that makes one thing out of two or more things. So the term integration to be applied in the unifying scheme of knowledge as originally accounted in Islam can be very loose and misleading if the process of integration not to be seen through the lens of Islamic worldview. Islamic worldview, or in Arabic we call it Ru'yatul Islam lil Wujud, projects the ontological facts, reality, and the visions of true hakikah in Islam that sets the final meaning, pursuit, and essence of everything. Some scholars are determined to do integration of knowledge, yet it was done in the superficial manner by simply coupling related Quranic verses or hadiths in their far-reaching applied sciences, or the mismatching of the right employment of Islamic theories into their research as so to be seen Islamic. Basic key terms of Islamic governing the worldview of Islam are not addressed through the semantic structure of Quranic Arabic leading to the error and narrow definitions of the knowledge interpretation. Meanwhile, in the context of epistemological, direct integrations of knowledge without considering the attributes and hierarchical nature of knowledge can be leading to misinterpretation of knowledge creation that will cause, among others, equalizations of all knowledge on the same level of comparison, leading to the wrong employment of methodology with the essence of object of study, and not recognizing the legitimate channels of knowledge in principle and its place in the knowledge system, accordingly creating epistemological vice that is extremism of thought in elevating a stream of thought, whether empirical or rationalism. Then it also contribute to the failure to understand the authority of knowledge, and academics are inclined and uncritical to be the consumer or users of existing contemporary Western theories and superficially force combining Quranic verses with the relative context of research. And for the context of methodological, some might also be in the ignorance of using the proper methodological approach in doing research, pertaining to the integration of knowledge because they are purely non-aware of what are the parts disintegrated and why and how they parted from the actual mega scale of knowledge, as well as who as a critical part of it as an integrator. Is also highlighted by Professor Dr. Asman Bakar in his work 2018. So what we should do and what we should deal with this agenda. So this paper proposed way forward in order to give a correct idea on the notion of integration of knowledge. So we come up with the framework which for the ontology, it needs to be make sure basic integration of knowledge with clear elements of Islamic worldview centering on Tawhid. It means that the employment of the Islamic language in defining and interpreting the key terms of Islam in knowledge development. And then in the context of epistemology, understanding the essentials of Islamic epistemology, and axiology, the establishment of the relationship between the subject of knowledge, knower, the possessor of knowledge, God, and the object of knowledge, the known. And just a bit detail on this ontology is clearly to contend that the integrations of knowledge necessitate the basic axiom of the worldview of Islam, centering on Tawhid, doctrine of oneness. From the unity of Allah, the first principle of Islam and of everything Islamic, the work plan systematically leads us to the unity of creation, cosmic order, and the interconnections of everything. The unity of knowledge, unity of life, human existence is an amanah from God, and human beings are trustees or khalifa of the abode of our terrestrial journey, unity of humanity, and finally, the complementary nature of relation and reason. The interconnectedness between man to God, man to his or herself, man to other men, and man to universe, other creations, must be established as the thinking framework of Tawhidic paradigm in doing integration of knowledge. That's why the unity of thought will then spring up the elements of Islamic worldview, or to Islam al-Wujud, according to Professor Latas, as being refined to nine fundamental elements, which are God, Rabb and Ilah, revelation, Wah, His creations, Khalq and Makhluk, man and the psychology of human soul, insight and Ruh, knowledge, Alim and Ma'arifah, religion, Deen, freedom, Ikhtiyar, values and virtues, Fadilah and happiness, Sa'adah. And just to highlight some of the conclusions from this paper, which we believe that as a grand project of Islamic intellectual revivalism, integrations of knowledge is premised in the virtue of replying to the problem of dichotomy and fragmentations of contemporary knowledge due to the separation of sciences from Tawhid. And then the idea of integration of knowledge encounters difficulties in presenting its philosophical justification, be it ontological, epistemological, sociological, and methodological, in interconnected and comprehensive manner without the process of standardizations to be established beforehand. In venturing integration of knowledge initiative, especially in higher learning education, conclusive and comprehensive framework of integrations of knowledge must be established in aggregate term. Despite the pitfalls, integration of knowledge is having potential to develop the paradigm of knowledge from the scale of intradisciplinary up to multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary to transdisciplinary. Last but not least, the advocates of integration of knowledge must progressively put forth its philosophical justification, highlight its leading expert thinkers as the public reference and workable plans to be implemented in the arena of research, curriculum teaching and learning in higher learning institutions to make sure integration of knowledge becomes the nucleus to the knowledge culture and problem solvers. With that, I would like to end my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention and for your participation in this conference. Till meet again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.